assisting us. It's massive contributions. So we are certainly, not alone, but the number of people coming and seeking help now is just, we've got, over 1,000 communications coming in a day in various platforms, and particularly our inbox. So we do just ask for your patience in some of those replies, and we'll be letting you know a better way that you can communicate with us. Just for those of you that might not know so much about Voices for Freedom, I'm going to just quickly let you know a few things that we have done. We've fundraised and sent out 2 million, delivered 2 million flyers. We've just put an order in for another 1 million flyers that we'll be getting out and about delivered. We fundraised for 100 billboards. Some of those were taken down, but we did generate a lot of press in relation to those for freedom of speech. We've had over 21 live events that we've hosted with doctors around New Zealand, a big symposium event. We've got many local and international collaborations in all different spheres as they relate to rights and freedoms of Kiwis, which is why we have set up Voices for Freedom, is to defend these rights, especially freedom of speech and medical freedom. We've got a COVID response survival kit that's been downloaded tens of thousands of times by many of you. We're doing an update on that, and we've now got these new template letters, which is our way of helping you all deal with the deluge of requests by having these template letters and tools available on our website, and we'll be going through those tonight. I'm a lawyer by background and training. I had over a decade as a corporate litigation lawyer. I have been not practicing as a lawyer for several years now and working in other businesses, and now Voices for Freedom. So it's my pleasure to have Phil Worth with me. Phil has over 30 years experience as a lawyer, and most recently as a litigation partner in the UK. And I'll let Phil introduce himself a little more, and then we can get started with tonight.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Good evening, everyone. A little bit about me. Strange kind of career path for me. I spent the first 15 years of my professional life as a policeman in New Zealand, and prosecuted at Auckland District Court in the last 4 or 5 years of that time. When I completed my degree, I decided I wanted to do work in the UK, and I went there and practiced in a commercial law firm for a number of years. Then I went into a local authority and led a litigation team working with local authority, or for the local authority, in respect of a whole wide range of actions that are taken against or on behalf of that authority. So that's me. 33 years as practicing lawyer, and retired December last year, thinking I could return to New Zealand and have an easy life. That's not going to happen. I saw what was happening here. My wife became involved with Voices for Freedom. I saw how that was going, and met up with Claire, and I've not looked back. I've absolutely enjoyed my involvement in any way I can help Claire and Alia and Libby, and make Voices for Freedom a success, and also to be there for all those people, all you people out there who need our help. We will do our very best for you, but you can imagine there is a lot of people out there. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think you came along at just the right time with the right experience to help behind the scenes. So Phil and we have joined by, I think there's 7 other lawyers which are helping to work in-house behind the scenes with Voices for Freedom. And then I'll talk a bit later about the other lawyers that we've reached out to externally. But the first thing really, just to make sure everybody is aware, is that we are having so many communications a day. We have an auto response that goes out when you email us now, which does have a lot of useful links, which should cover all of the information that many of you do request. So do check that out. We're also going to be putting a form in place for those of you looking to have assistance for legal advice. That even if you filled in a form previously, we will be promoting the new link, which is going to help us liaise with external lawyers. So please look out for that, because, and just at this time, don't email us about a specific legal query, as it's not possible to cater to so many different queries set up like that. But in a form situation, we can look to be of further assistance. the other thing is that please look at the website if you've got a question, and we'll take you there in a moment just to screen share so that you can see some of the different tools that we have available. But definitely check that out, because there's so much information there that you will likely find that something to help you is already on the website. Now, also, I just want to make sure that we have the disclaimer here that for tonight, we're not providing legal or medical advice. It's for educational purposes only, and you'll need to consider your own situation and seek specific legal advice or independent medical or legal advice as that goes. So this is an educational webinar. Now, the most important thing is to hold the line here. I know there is a lot of anxiety and not trying to downplay anybody's situation, because we know it's very serious. We feel for you. We see what's happening. You know, we're seeing so many people's personal stories. It's heartbreaking. But please, if you know one thing from this evening, it's to do your best to hold the line. And there is still no law that says teachers, early childhood education or health workers are to be jabbed. And this is despite letters from DHBs and employers that's saying that the no jab, no job is mandated. There is a requirement that teachers attending school in alert level areas 3, if you're in alert level 3, be tested before stepping foot on school grounds. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that later, but that's the order that we currently have. Do you have anything further with that, Phil?
I'll cover the testing requirements a little bit later.
Yes. So there's also been a lot of rumours flying around. There have been some, I think there were some things done on Photoshop that made it look like there were certain requirements for obtaining government benefits, these sorts of things. So, you know, that's not to say that these sorts of things are not being thought of or talked about, or things of talking about requirements for leaving Auckland and all that kind of thing. But really try before you share things to substantiate and check that, because the fear that goes with this isn't helpful to people when you're trying to do something constructive for yourself. So just try and check these things out before you share them on, and be aware, be mindful. Like we are obviously keeping an eye out. We're looking for when these different orders and legislation comes through, but just think about that before sharing things. Now, yeah, and Phil, I think you're going to talk about just a couple of the cases that are underway, just because a lot of people are, you know, curious or get confused about what's happening there.
Sure. So I don't know if folk out there are aware that there was a case that was run earlier this year, which was unsuccessful, but this is a different case that's being run by Sue Gray, and she's running a judicial review against the government in respect of the amended vaccinations order. This is the order that extended from to include border workers and connections to border workers. So it's an extended order, and that is going to be heard on Thursday and Friday of this week. We anticipate an early decision, possibly the week after, but that's not entirely clear. And so I wouldn't hold that as gospel. It depends on how long the judge takes to formulate his judgment. That case might have an impact on anything that Voices for Freedom might be thinking about and taking in terms of a judicial review in relation to teachers and healthcare workers as two distinct groups who are not part of the extended order. And we're still waiting, of course, for the vaccination order to come, although it was announced over a week ago. And we'll have to have a close look at that to see how that's been framed. But I think the case in respect of teachers and healthcare workers who are not directly linked to the borders in any way is much stronger to battle with than the one that Sue is fighting, because what's called the health rationale for the limitation on the Bill of Rights is stronger for the Crown in that case, because the risk of infection and transmission at the borders is the greatest there, and not out in the community, or indeed in using the teachers example, in schools where children are least likely to be the ones that will be infected, transmit, or have transmission problems, or indeed to suffer significantly from COVID if they do get it. So that would be a case if we were to take for teachers and healthcare, would be working on that base and saying that any kind of limitation on the Bill of Rights and the requirement to vaccinate is disproportionate and unreasonable limitation of that right. It's not easy to run those cases, and the judiciary very often are very reluctant to overturn decisions by government which they make ostensibly for the health of the nation. And so we would have to put the very best case we possibly could, but there's never any guarantee of success. And I'm sure people out there will appreciate that. The other case that's being run is an employment case taken on behalf of a group of teachers and ECE and healthcare workers. And that is being run. I believe that the advocate is a chap called Greg Bennett, who's taking that case. And he's looking to have it brought before the Employment Relations Authority and then passported into the employment court, where he can seek an injunction against the mandate, the vaccination mandate. He's also seeking to get damages for injury to feelings and humiliation. So those are the two cases that are running, and I've just touched briefly on the possibility of something that Voices for Freedom are looking at very carefully right now. Thanks,
yeah, that's right. So we're not a part of those cases, but obviously we keep abreast as much as we can and keep you updated. So right now, we are really, what we've seen as a need is to just look at what are the orders that are out and how we can assist in those, whilst being mindful, of course, of what is said from the podium. And so what looks likely, of course, a lot of this is what's called trial balloons, where they say one thing, they say deliberately something that's more dramatic or further than their planning, just to test the water or to even make people get more fearful, so that when they actually come out with what they're seeking, it seems as somewhat as a relief, or it's less, but it's still nevertheless draconian. So we do keep in mind all of those things. But with that said, we've got all these materials that we've put together on the website to really, we want to empower you to take action, because clearly with possibly 700,000 plus adult New Zealanders directly impacted, and that they do not want to get the jab. There's various figures of how many people are left, but at least 650,000, but quite possibly 100,000 more. Then those people, and then all the people that are affected by them, families, probably some of you here, people who live with those people, if you're like seeing the extent with the testing and so forth of them wanting to have people who live in the same place as someone who's an early childhood educator in the home. So there's a huge impact for all of that, and there wouldn't even be enough lawyers in the whole of New Zealand to really cater for this. So you're going to have to empower yourself. And I'll do a quick refresh in a minute of the different materials that we have. The other thing is we mentioned, we did a quick webinar on Sunday that we have established relationships with various lawyers and employment advocates. And we are looking to be, like I foreshadowed before, that have a system where we can link you with those people. And it may well be that Voices for Freedom is able to assist in respect of the costs of those actions. But we clearly have to have a system that we can handle the demand. So that is why, as I said before, we're going to have a form available where you can put your need in. But we would ask that firstly, you would definitely look to work on things yourself by getting a template and following instructions. And we have an FAQ, so I'll show you that in a minute. But as I say, we have got a law firm that we're working with, and we've just agreed on a relationship with them where we're going to be able to have a person work full-time on these matters, and there are other firms as well that will seek those relationships with. And then if anybody on the call is aware of good lawyers who would like to be part of our recommended lawyers, then that's great. If you can, if you can email us and just put in caps in the heading lawyer to assist, right? And we will look to talk with them and get them involved. So yes, I think, Phil, I'm going to screen share, and if you can just talk through a few of the points there. And then I will have it. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Screen share. Yeah. All right. So is that, can you see
yeah,
the screen
I
now?
can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to begin with, as Claire indicated earlier, it's very important that that you hold the line, that you don't concede anything to your employers, whether they're board of trustees or DHBs, and that you begin the work of getting together all the information that you need, which would include your employment agreement, your position description. Look at your employment agreement. Does it specify a requirement for to be vaccinated? I suspect it probably doesn't, but it's always important to check the agreement to see if it does, because that obviously creates a problem for you if there is a requirement to be vaccinated, because then you have a contractual obligation.
Yeah, and I'll just, sorry, Phil, I just so just to show you guys that what I did, you go to resources here, and you click on employment kit if you haven't already. Or if you have and you've lost your place, you can do this again and it will take you there. So you go to employment kit, it'll take you to a sign up to get the kit. You'll land on this page for employment resources, and what Phil's speaking to right now is the Read First homework part of this. There are webinars here and there's a whole lot of other information here that we'll cover in a minute, but he's just talking about what you get behind this Read First.
Yeah. So yes, so go into that tab, and then there's a whole series of questions that you need to ask yourself. If you complete those, then as you go, that helps us in understanding what the chronology is. So in other words, this is to assist you in preparing a chronology so that we know exactly what happened from on the specific dates that action is taken by the employer, presenting letters or having contact with you about the vaccination.
Yeah, this is the one that you would take to if you're going to do it yourself,
yes.
But it would also be useful if you end up coming through to get your own lawyer or assisted by us. So either way, this is really important information that will save everybody time and potentially you money with getting advice.
Thank you, yes. Yeah. Just a few points on the employment relationship. Just to remember that the employment relationship is based on good faith between the employer and employee. That's a mutual obligation you have to each other, and that means that there's a need for the employer to consult with you and to negotiate with you, as is necessary all around this whole area of the mandatory vaccinations and any changes of terms and conditions. That means the employer needs to give you information, perhaps in writing, and give you enough time to consider it. At meetings, make sure that you have a support person with you. You are entitled to it. Be sure that you have sufficient information about the meeting, what it's about, and an outline for it. It's worth recording the meeting. Don't do that in secret. Just indicate in the meeting that you want to record it. It's to benefit both parties, and you can offer to share. And I would certainly urge that you agree to share the recording with the employer at the conclusion, or once the meeting is completed and you're able to send it to them. The good thing about a recording is it makes sure that both parties behave properly and professionally towards each other, because everything's being recorded. Need to be aware that there are mutual obligations of health and safety, both on the employer and the employee, to make sure that they live and work in a risk-free or as free from risk environment as possible, and that the right steps are taken to ensure your health and safety. That means that the employer needs to consult with you when they're proposing some steps or measures to address a risk. In this case, infection or transmission of COVID, to have that discussion with you, what the measures they propose, and that in this case would be vaccination, and they should be talking to you about that and why. They should do a risk assessment of the role that you're in. It's not a person-specific risk assessment. It's a role assessment, and the reality of the risk. In other words, that the risk of transmission and infection is not purely fanciful, but a real risk, and they have to demonstrate that to you. And how the employer proposes that the vaccination is appropriate for meeting that risk. Now, an employer can't just simply introduce a new term into your contract. That has to be expressly agreed. Now, the employer, in the case of schools, the Board of Trustees or the DHBs will say that this is a statutory obligation that they have to comply with, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to fulfill their health and safety obligations to their employees. That remains the case. They must continue to do that, and therefore that proper consultation with you must take place. If your role is mandated or if you've been requested, wait for your employer to raise with you the need for you to be vaxxed. Don't invite them to tell you. Let them come to you and raise it with you. It's likely that this will be in writing, as probably in a letter or even in an email. Keep a copy of that written communication, either hard copy or electronic. Best if it's electronic, because it's easier to compile into a bundle later if it's needed for legal proceedings.
Phil, just to see, I don't know, have people lost sound? I just think a few people seem to have lost sound, but let us know if you can hear us. Oh, okay. There's just a few people. That's fine. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I hope you heard what I was saying.
Sorry.
So as I was saying, yes. So you'll be notified in writing, either in a letter or an email. Keep it. Keep the electronic record if it's by email, and add it to your chronology. Do it as soon as it happens so you don't get lost with the correspondence, because undoubtedly there will be exchanges of correspondence that will pick up pace and you'll need to keep up with your chronology. Sometimes an employer might just call a meeting, and I would suggest that you don't go to that meeting unless you have a full idea of what it's about. You've had plenty of time in which to prepare for it, and that you have a support person who can go with you. And again, as I say, consider recording that meeting. If it's a written notification of the requirement, then of the requirement for vaccine or a mandated requirement for vaccine, then you need to respond to your employer. And that should be in writing, of course. And we have some template letters that you can use. We haven't got one for teachers and healthcare workers yet because the order hasn't come out. But you'll see other examples on the resources page, and it's worth actually familiarising yourself with those letters. Because
I'll share the screen so people can see again these different letters that we've got that you've been talking about. So when you come for employment resources, then you've got a webinar. We'll put that as a link through, I think, to several webinars. At the moment, there's one of them. You've got the homework that we went over. You've got a template letter, a PCR letter there. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You've got different letters to your employer that Phil's going to cover. And there's what we've got here is one, you've got to look and read when it says down there, letter that has been mandated. There's three across the top, which are where you are subject to a mandate. But at the moment, the only people subject to a mandate are the border workers, and then there was the extended border workers. So those letters are not for education staff. And if an order comes out, we are going to create specific ones for anybody that it's covered by that, whether at the moment, presumably education and medical health. So the second one below is if it is mandated. And that's the difference. The blue envelope is where it's been mandated. The yellow bottle is where it is not yet mandated. And then there's some personal grievance ones. I think you're going to touch on those, Phil, but just to show people where they can go. There's a letter if you've been subject to bullying, coercion, a letter about face masks in the workplace. And then when you click here, and we'll look at that in a minute, there's more detailed letters about the testing, since we have actually now got an order about that.
Yeah, thanks. So if you wanted to, you could go and have a look at those. Bear in mind, as Claire says, they're not intended for the healthcare workers or for the teachers. There'll be specific letters drafted for those once we've seen the order, if it comes out, and what it contains, so that we can make sure that the letter remains relevant. Just to be clear, mandated means by order of the government. Requested simply means that the employer is requesting you to have the vaccine, and that they are quite different. I know that some of the schools and DHBs have jumped the gun and have started writing out to employees saying that they require the vaccine, require vaccines to be undertaken and so on. There is no order for that. There is no requirement yet. So I would certainly not be getting involved in discussions about something that has not yet been mandated.
But if you do wish to, if you're in the not mandated situation, such as pretty much is going to be many people on this call, because we know that we've the ones already have been on these calls with lawyers. So most of you are in that non-mandated situation. You can use one of those letters. Like if you want to get it out and look at it for the non-mandated, and if you feel that a response is necessary in respect of a letter received from the DHB, have a look at those 3 different types of letters that have been put up there.
Yes, so there are, in relation to the mandated letters, the long version that you saw there details your position on the vaccine. So it deals with a lot of information about the vaccine, the adverse events, the fact that COVID-19 is not a serious illness, and so on. I'm very badly summarizing it, but it gives more of a complete picture of the situation. The short letter doesn't say anything about your position on the vaccine, but simply requests the health and safety audits that the employer is required to give you, to undertake, I beg your pardon, and to consult with you on. There is a medical advice letter simply requesting medical advice, and it's a holding letter which you will need to respond.
Yeah, and I do see some quick question there about using the letters. So essentially, just be mindful of the disclaimers that are on the front of those letters. We are lawyers by background. This is what we do. Like put extra stuff like this, which you're stressed and you're like, what the heck's all that about? But please, the best thing to do if you're wanting to use them is to read those first couple of pages, which are not part of the letter. At the end of the day, if you choose to use that letter separately and cut and paste and do what you would like with it, that's okay. It's not then a letter that we have prepared. It's your own version of a letter. That's all right. But the reason it says in there is there's a comment about how you can use it, especially for people when they're sharing it. That's why if you're going to share any of our information, please share voicesforfreedom.co.nz/employment. I'll help her to put that up in a minute, the link, but the /employment means everybody comes in on our and gets the information. So if there's any updates, any typos or errors or anything noticed, they're going to get that update and get the full picture. Because if you just forward the letter by itself or without the disclaimers, that's when problems can arise. So that's just to cover some questions there in the comments about how to use the letters.
Yes, and I just quickly, I noticed someone saying, should they use the long or short letter? The short answer is read them and see which one suits you best. It depends on how you feel about it, how you feel about the vaccine, how you feel about the whole COVID-19 mess. One describes it in much more detail than the other, and you may feel that that's what you want to put to your employer. So it's really a matter of personal choice. Both work in different ways, and have a look and see how each one works for you. So having sent that letter off, you just need to wait for the employer's response. And when you get that, then if you don't get a response, then obviously the employer has failed to follow due process and failed to conduct the audit, and then you can raise a personal grievance. And we have some help on the website about raising personal grievances and a template, I believe, on there.
Yeah. So that's down here. These personal grievances. There's a letter to the employer, pre-mediation form, and applications employment authority. So these are done so that it may be you that is going to use them. It gives you some idea of what's involved, and also could be something if you end up taking it to a lawyer who's not yet been briefed on these things, that will be a helpful place to start for them for a background.
Yes, thank you, Claire. The other thing I noticed just coming up in the chat, so I was distracted by the chat coming up. Somebody was asking that the unions, or saying, or just noting that some of the unions weren't in support. Well, it has rather shocked me that all the unions seem to have come out in support of mandating the vaccine, which doesn't seem to me to be running or operating for the well-being and health of all of the people that they are responsible for as a union. I have noticed people mentioning the possibility of strikes, and I just have to say that's something that I wouldn't recommend, because strikes need to be done through ballots to be lawful, so there are other forms of action that teachers can take, and that's probably not for me to say what you should do, but I'm sure that the government will wake up if they find that teachers suddenly have left school and not returning, and left a serious problem with teaching, and the same in the healthcare sector with people, midwives, staff leaving.
Yeah,
the midwives, yes, particularly the midwives.
And we do know that the midwives have been getting in touch with their DHBs, who they and advising them that it is looking like they will be needing to hand over their caseloads, which can be considerable numbers. I know for some of you that are on the call, there are some midwives which have caseloads of 500 women up to June of next year, and that's a serious issue for the hospitals to have to deal with. So some of this does come into the position of leverage that you may find yourself in, and if you're able to express that in a way that I would encourage, that the way to do that would be to state something that looks like you're going to be forced to do, rather than putting it with ultimatums and so forth. But that's something that we've set up, these industry groups, which we haven't really talked about. I think I'm losing track of what I said, but it's really helpful if you can know what other people in the same industry as you are doing. So the update on the industry groups, thank you for your patience. It's just taken a little longer than we first anticipated, because we have set up a platform that's entirely built separately. It's not a social media third party, right? It's going to be secure, and we've got the first people have been in there today. Everything looks like it's ready to go. We're just testing it today. Some groups have already been got together in Telegram because we didn't want to delay, but for those other ones, it felt preferable to hold off a little bit of a delay so that we can actually have a secure platform. We can't be kicked off and so forth. So there'll be more information. Please keep checking your emails about the industry group, and do be aware on that note that, unfortunately, I think it's just the stress of the times, a lot of people filled in the form with the wrong email. So if you haven't received any information about industry groups, please go to our website, go to the Take Action tab, and resubmit that form, because it will be okay. It won't double up in the system. And that way, and just take extra care with your email. I think we've got a system now where you have to verify the email twice. But yes, and I wanted to just show, we're looking at the PCR testing now, as to what, so I'll just share the screen again so you can see where to go on this. When you are on the website, so you've come to this section that you've bookmarked after you've signed up for the /employment, there's PCR here. Now, there are different letters that, actually it hasn't been saved yet, sorry. If you go to resources, you go to the resources tab and come down to template letters PCR, okay? So under resources on our website, come to this template PCR, and when you click there, you'll get a number of different letters that relate to testing. So tonight, just because it's a specific group that is under the gun in this with having had a mandate, we're going to talk about the teachers, but you can see that we've got a general template letter for an employer, one with crossing the alert level boundary, and one with if you're an MIQ or have friends or family in MIQ and they're wanting to make a stand in respect of those PCR tests. But I'll let Phil catch up on these two, which you can see, one for the two letters. One is a request for for education staff, and they've just got this cherry. I'd have to ask Alia what the significance of that, but the ones with the cherry are for the teachers, and the mandated one is what we're talking about specifically here. Now, put that there so you can, do you want to speak to that one, Phil?
Yeah, so, what I'd like to do is just go back to the order itself.
Yes.
And just to remind people that the order specifies teachers, ECE staff, and service providers attending school at level 3 are required to be tested. And the test means a test done at a testing centre, and must be either one of the following, or could be one or more of the following actually: nasal swabs, mouth or throat swabs, and there is the possibility of saliva testing in the order, but I have to say that at the moment there aren't enough centres at which saliva testing is offered, and at the moment it's not being specifically offered to teachers or healthcare workers. It's being offered actually to border workers, particularly port workers, I believe, who can have the saliva testing, and they have to do recurring tests. The order specifies that the affected person, which will be the relevant educational professional, has to be, if they're physically attending or performing work or providing a service on site at an early childhood service or hostel, must provide to the employer no later than the 26th of October, that's not far away, a negative result from a test for COVID-19. And that has to have been obtained within the previous 5 days. So actually not too far away when people need to be booking their tests. Unless you have proof of a medical exemption under clause 8, but I have to say that those are rarely given for PCR tests, and there has to be a really good reason that your GP can provide that would allow for you to apply that exemption. The other group of affected persons are those who provide home-based education and care service, and they must not provide the service after the 26th of October unless every affected person who resides in the home, that could be the family as well, where the service is provided, has provided a negative result from a negative test result, within the previous 5 days. So that's from now, effectively. And then the third group is those teachers or those support staff who physically attend or perform work or provide a service on-site and at an affected education service other than a home-based education and care service, unless there's been a negative test within the previous 5 days. So those are the three groups, and I've referred to the what's available in terms of the tests. That's the nose swabs, mouth swabs, and there is a reference to saliva testing, but that doesn't seem to be a practical option at the moment unless the government provides a whole bunch more testing centres available to give that. The provisions about testing, just so that it's clear, don't indicate that the centres can direct which tests should be applied, nor does it say that the person who's presenting themselves for a test can demand a particular test. But it seems to me that if you are having recurring tests, that you can stipulate that you have the non-invasive type test, in other words, either the mouth swab or, if it's available, saliva testing. And it would be unreasonable, I think, to refuse to give you those, given that there would be a recurring requirement for those people who are not going to be vaccinated. I hope that makes sense. Just see.
Somebody's asking who pays for the test. So I know in the letter we have said that we consider, when you're writing to the school about, or if it's the facility, that you would like them to pay for it, that you think that that should be the appropriate thing that was done. So it's no commentary on that, but that would be what we would suggest that you say.
Yes, that's right. I think this is a requirement of the employer. It would be unreasonable to expect the employee to pay the costs of each of the tests, and I see that. Well, I would expect that the employer would pick up the tab. If they don't, I think that there's going to be a problem there, isn't there? Because if you're not funded to take the tests, I'm assuming that people will not present themselves for the test, or they will present themselves for the test, but not pay until it's got to refer the invoice to the employer.
What we're going to do is we will engage in some correspondence to see what we can do to get the saliva testing extended and to get clarification on those costings, because it seems a completely reasonable request, and so that's what we will look to do. I'm just looking through here, so it is a little confusing just when you're probably hearing it. We did send an email that clarified some more information about this this testing order. So I just sent an email again this evening. It's the one that has the title "Hold the Line" at the top. Actually, I can possibly maybe quickly get the link for that so that you can get it, and that it's maybe easier when you see it written down as to who's covered. But the key thing was that for this week, it was covering those. It would really be those in alert level 3 who would have to go into school for the children that are there for the emergency schooling. But other than that, if you're at home, there was that time frame of next Tuesday to get this done, to have it done before next Tuesday. I'll just get that link so people can have it. Link. Copy. And I've put in the comments, as we've said, if you've been on previous webinars, I'll just type this, sorry, I can't do link to info retesting. Okay, this link, it's a funny link, but that link is to the email that I've sent this evening in case it didn't get to you, and that has got more information about the testing and writing, just kind of summarising what Phil has just said. Now, so wait a minute, I lost my train of thought there. So
can I just say, I mean, people are saying, well, about the PCR test, the nasal swabs, the mouth or throat swabs, they are also PCR tests, but they're doing it in a different way. They're just using a swab from the mouth. So it's not as an invasive procedure. Yes, there is the possibility they can collect DNA from that, but I think that's unavoidable. And for teachers who want to carry on teaching and are happy to undertake a mouth swab, I don't think they're collecting DNA, but who knows these days what they're capable of. But I don't know what the only alternative to that is to stop working and make your protest heard that way.
I've just put in the comments.
That's an individual decision. Sorry, I was just saying, but that's an individual decision. That it's easy for people to say, "Well, we'll just stop working," but that's a whole world of hurt for a lot of people.
So, as we've been saying, I've just put in the comments a couple of times the FAQs that we've written out and are on our website, which are based on questions we get in the emails and questions we've had in webinars. So definitely peruse those this evening or tomorrow, and I think you'll find those helpful. We will collect as well the questions that have been asked tonight. We'll try to get to a few of them now, but we'll do that so that we can then add to our FAQs. So those FAQs are found on the website under, they're actually under the About. We may put them also under the Employment. But right now, if you've got that link, and if you go to our website and check on the About tab, there is FAQs, legislation FAQs, and there's a whole lot of new ones that we've added. So they also indicate to you which letters you should use in which circumstance. So hopefully that does help. You do have to try and find a bit of a quiet time to sit down and concentrate on these things. And I know somebody said, oh, in the comments, I sent this letter, I think I've sent the wrong letter. Look, don't stress about that. If you sent one that was mandated and you don't think it was mandated, you haven't made it be a mandate by writing the letter, right? Just if what I would suggest is you might, depending on what has been the response, you can have another look at the other letter and just send a clarification. And you'll see in the beginning of the non-mandated letter, it states that there isn't a mandate, or you can reiterate that and say, further to my letter, I understand there is no mandate currently for this position, right? So don't unnecessarily worry about that situation. So the industry groups, I think I've mentioned that we've just taken some time over that, because especially with some groups, we didn't want them to be overridden with trolls. It's quite difficult to manage groups like that. So all of the groups have trusted admins that have come on, and like I say, we're looking to launch those. We've got people in there right now in the new group, and just rolling that out as quickly as we can. And I mentioned already the email situation. If you haven't heard anything back from industry groups, please go to the Take Action tab and sign up again, because it's quite likely that your email, there was a problem with it. I'll just finish the upcoming webinars. We are looking to do these types of webinars every Tuesday on employment. I know there's a lot of questions about employers, and no, we haven't forgotten about you. We have got some more notes in place, and thoughts as to bring on another lawyer there to cover that with us. So the next employment webinar for sure will be next Tuesday at this time, but in all likelihood, and depending on what other new legislation comes out, we'll have another one, and we'll look to do something for employers as well, probably before next Tuesday. So we will have that on our website, by email. That's just the best way. We put it on our Telegram as well. So in a minute, when I open up the chat, and our assistant will put through the links for our Telegram. That is one of the best ways. We're on Telegram because we've been kicked off Facebook. We're not on Facebook, so that the Facebook accounts for Voices for Freedom are all fake, and they do get quite, they think they're quite sophisticated. They even have fake accounts pretending to call out the other fake accounts. They're all fake. We're not on Facebook at this time, and we're not on YouTube either, because we got deleted off YouTube. So there's a lot of issues with censorship. So we're on Telegram, which is a sort of alternative channel that many of you might not be familiar with. It's actually quite easy, and we just use it as a notification board for upcoming things. So I think the key thing, right, Phil, before maybe we get a chance to have a look at a few comments, is to make sure that you don't panic, that you take a deep breath, don't quit, don't go into meetings on your own without support. At the very least, send an email if you feel like you're caught on the fly and somebody is demanding to have you in a meeting tomorrow or very soon. You want to reiterate that you're getting advice and support, and that a more appropriate time to meet, would be like give yourself a few days, whatever seems reasonable. After tomorrow, it would be reasonable to suggest the beginning of next week. Don't be alone, and get connected in the industry groups and empower yourself, take action, and keep an eye out as well for the form. We appreciate that getting legal advice can be daunting. It can be, people feel, if you don't have the funding. So we are really looking to a way to be able to assist people and help a lot of people in the same time. It's just a process of setting up the systems at the same time as also helping people. I don't know, Phil, if you've got some more comments, I'll have a look. Did you see anything?
Well, just to be aware that there is a very, very large group. There are 3,500 people at this webinar, teachers and healthcare workers. So a very, very large group of people. You have a lot of power in your hands. If each and every one of you didn't go to work tomorrow, where would it leave everybody? That's the thought. I'm not I'm not advocating that. Perhaps an anecdote. There were a group of healthcare workers in Ontario who were told that they all needed to be vaccinated, and when the day came when they were all supposed to be vaccinated and they weren't, the Ontario government had no choice but to extend it for a further month. And I suspect that when that month expires, they'll have to do it again, unless, of course, they've hired enough staff to replace the people that weren't vaccinated. And that is a sort of power that you will have. Don't think you don't have a lot of power in your hands. You do. You do. There are so many of you.
I've just been notified of a few things from the team. Just to clarify, so the PCR letters, they are being updated again tonight. So that's all right. Sorry, it can get a little bit confusing, but we're chasing so many updates and different things happening all the time. So those PCR letters that I indicated to you, I gave you the reference for where to go. I'll put it in again. But best thing to do is have a look at the other letters tonight and see where you're at, and look at the PCR ones in the morning. Just put that link there because they will be updated. And the other thing, which isn't incredibly important, but I'm being told it's an apple for teachers, not a cherry. So very important. But if you're looking for the teacher letters, they've got an apple on them. Just seeing if there was anything else.
Just sorry, Claire, I noticed in the chat that some people who are not teachers and healthcare workers, and I apologize for all those people that are listening into this and listening to this webinar who are not in those two groups. You, of course, are in the same boat as the non-mandated groups. In other words, I suspect that a lot of you will be working in companies that are not mandated to have the vaccination, where the company is requiring you to do it. And to you folk, I would say this, that there are template letters for you to use. I would urge you to use them. The company has an obligation to go through all the health and safety audits and risk assessments and so on, in the same way as I described for the mandated teachers and healthcare workers. And you should follow that same process that I described earlier on. And you will come to using our template letters and see where that takes you. I know some employers have had our letters, and I've had feedback from people who've used them who've said that it has made the employer sit back and think about what they're asking. And obviously because they couldn't demonstrate a proper health and safety rationale for imposing the vaccine. So there's that for those folk who are out there and not in the health care sector or in teaching.
Yeah, that's right. So yes, I think the easiest thing to do is to respect everybody's time, because we're already at the hour, is that we will do, as we've said, otherwise I'll copy the comments and the questions, and we will turn those into FAQs where we see that there's a significant number of people asking the same questions. We do have, like I said, I've put the link, so there's FAQs under the About tab on our website. Also, under the watch tab on our website, it goes through to the video channel, and you've got, like Phil mentioned, the health and safety webinar that we did with the health and safety expert, really worth watching. And just goes over the different things that you could think about and then put to an employer, or at least you'll know what the employer ought to have done. You've got I think we've got 3 or maybe even 4 webinars now that we've done on employment law. They're actually all a little bit different. The first one we did, we had a lawyer and an employment advocate. Then we've had one where we had some of the barristers that are going to be helping us. So I think you'll find them all useful, but the key one that covers a lot of the topics is the one that's included in the employment kit. And the other one that I should add there is the health and safety one that you can find on our video channel. So like I say, you just go to the Voices for Freedom and click on the watch tab, and it takes you directly there. Just checking to see if there's any other notes from our team that we should be talking about. I think, let me check. I think that's really covers everything, because just the key thing that there are many of you, and like I say, the best way, we've got groups that have mobilized and when you can connect with each other. So we appreciate that there's been a bit of a delay in connecting everybody together, but it's ready to go. So very shortly you will be getting shared with more information on that. So that would be one of the key things I would think to look at doing.
And just to reiterate, there's a lot of stuff in the news which is seriously depressing to people about what the government plans are for those who don't want to take the vaccination, vaccination passports, and no job, no jab, no fun. No jab, no job, no fun. I keep getting that round the wrong way.
But it's all the same. It's all terrible.
That's the second time. That was the second time I've made that error. But it's the best thing to do is turn off the TV. Don't listen to the news. Don't read the paper, because all it's going to do is bring you down. And,
we do need, unfortunately, some people have to sacrifice the hour or so to listen to these briefings. I'm not in that category. I get, I can't listen, but there are some very, courageous people who do take the time. Actually, the funny thing is that I know one of our friends who runs the coronavirus plushie. We should do a shout out to him because he does brilliant videos. So definitely he's on Telegram and BitChute. Not sure if he's on, I think, Telegram and BitChute, but if if someone's got the link, Chase, you might put it there for, Chase, have put the Telegram account, but also coronavirus plushie. And he's got a thing going on with the thumbs up, thumbs down. And, I know we're all very serious here, but sometimes, in any way it's true. People are not happy. So if it gives you some kind of pleasure to go over there and put your thumbs down, that's a little thing he's got going on, as well as very, very good videos that highlight the hypocrisy of so much of what is going on. So do remember, if you are in a situation of wanting to still, which we highly encourage you to share information that can help people understand some of the science, that Peter McCullough, the video, the work that he did, and we put lots of different versions of what he did on our website, or on the video channel at Watch. Those have been the most successful at people understanding what's going on. So there's lots of different versions of what he did that we cut it to 5 minutes, but one of the best ones is a 30-minute one that actually Coronavirus Plushie made for us, which puts in not only his talk, but useful screenshots and shares of what he's actually talking about. So highly recommend to look up that one. And also what was the other one that's come in? Oh, just the videos of Jacinda, when she's saying that this does not, COVID, the vaccine, doesn't stop you getting COVID, right? And doesn't stop you transmitting. So I think that's one of the most powerful things and most powerful points, because with that being the case, none of this is, of course, makes any sense on a scientific level. But we know, most of you here will know that. It's just that I think it's important if you can keep sharing that information. So I think, people haven't most people here are not, they've chucked their TV out. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, look, I know what I need to do before we leave. I do have to do this funny thing where I get all the comments because it doesn't automatically save them. Select all. So I just have to do that.
While you're doing that, Claire, I mentioned it on Sunday night on the webinar about the protest action that took place in Auckland, in particular the peaceful car protest. I was there. I was taking part. I've got teachers in the family, and they're also affected in the same way as teachers out there. I've never been so amazed by the support that came out in their cars with all the signs out, the tooting of horns. There must have been thousands of cars who were in support. And what really impressed me was that people who weren't part of that protest who were tooting in support. I think there's a lot of support out there from all kinds of people for teachers and healthcare workers, for people anybody who's subjected to a mandated vaccine. I think there's a lot of uneasiness in the community generally about what the government is doing. And I just wanted to raise that. I was very proud to be part of that protest.
I'm still waiting for the little whirling button. So, but it's good to see. It doesn't, like, there's so many comments. I think it struggles. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm surprised that protest.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, we had it was log jam. Queen Street, Karangapi Road cars couldn't move, and yet not a peep out of the news. It just shows you that nobody wants to know about the protest. There wasn't much about the protest in the Domain either. A lot of the people there joined the protest in the cars.
Yeah, I've done that now. So thank you, everybody. And just know we're working, sometimes people think it's just that there's not so many of us back here either. It did start off with just the three of us in December, but we've got so many people now helping, and we're really gearing to be able to be a slick operation. I think we do achieve a lot. But it's true to say that, we're obviously under a lot of pressure with the number of people that have been connecting with us, just thousands and thousands. So we have people that we are contracting to undertake a variety of services. Like any not-for-profit, we now have a head office with a group of people who are working from between part-time to some nearly full-time. I think we've got 15 or 20 people plus all the lawyers. So just wanting to reassure you that we have a good team. We're growing, we're getting bigger, and we are employing the kind of people that enable us then to get in touch and mobilize so many of the volunteers, because we know there are thousands of people, actually, quite literally, of you, and thank you, who have volunteered. But obviously you can appreciate there's a lot of sensitivity with the work that we do. So it's not a question of just being able to push a button and activate everybody in a lot of the more sensitive roles. So we're getting to all of that. And on that note, if you haven't already, please think to join a local group of Voices for Freedom. The local groups, it's a bit different from just our mailing list. That's where people would like to catch up in person and either participate in some of our pop-ups, which have been really successful, peaceful, silent stands on the street. And we've got sentence signs along the roads that are really letting people see who we are. If you're shy, you can hold it over your face. And on that note, and if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, we're really looking to help facilitate different groups to do some of these videos, which can be really powerful. So we'll have more information about that. I know some of the groups, like the midwives and some teacher groups, have already set about doing that, and I highly recommend it. So it's definitely something we can kick off more with the industry. But don't forget, look on Take Action and join up a local group. I think we're going to be getting on, before the end of the year, will be 25,000 people in local groups, which is incredible and really powerful. So with that, I think I've talked too much. we'll say good evening and take care, everyone, and check for the updated PCR letters in the morning.
Okay.
Pleasure talking to you all.
Yes, thank you very much, Phil. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.